Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag. I love doing this video. I think everybody loves doing this video when we hit the halfway mark. It's just really fun to look back at all of the books we've read, kind of remember all of the books we've read, if there were some in there that like fell to the wayside because maybe they just weren't that great, or just reminisce on the ones that we still can't stop thinking about. It's just really fun, so I'm really excited to be doing this. I got all of my questions from Jamie, of course, because I adore her videos and I just, really wanted to do the same questions as her. Most people do tend to do the same variations of these questions. I just always pick one creator and kind of go with theirs. So yeah, I picked Jamie's because I love her videos. Anyway, before we get into some of the questions, I am going to go over some of my stats on Fable. I use Fable and Goodreads to track my reading, but Fable has a couple more stats on there than Goodreads does, so we'll be using that. And of course, I know we're midway through July at this point, but I'm only going to be calculating for the books read in January through June, not including the few books that I've managed to finish in July so far. So if I'm looking at the amount of books that I've read for the year, my goal was 200. I read 105. 3 of those were read in July. So the first half of the year, I managed to read 102 books, which is fantastic. I'm right on track for getting those 200 books read in the year. It says that my most read genre is romance, which I think also includes some romantasy. I think that that's also in that category because, yeah, I'm pretty sure that I haven't read just 52 strictly romance books. That would surprise me a lot, in all honesty. But then, of course, fantasy is right behind it with 35 strictly fantasy books, and then 22 thriller books. Those are like my top 3 categories, which is not surprising. Unfortunately, my average rating is apparently a 3.4 star. That's a little depressing, but it's also not surprising because I've been trying to read through some of the books that have been on my backlist for a really long time. And unfortunately, a lot of those have been misses, whether or not that's because I'm not vibing with those books anymore like I would have when I had originally bought them like 6+ years ago, or if it's because like some of them were ones that I just randomly grabbed from little free libraries, or when I worked at Barnes & Noble and they had ARCs available and we could just kind of take the overflow stock, I would grab a bunch of those. So maybe I just was picking books that maybe weren't my thing, but they were kind of available and yeah, not great, but that was kind of what I was doing for a little bit because I was in college and not buying my own books. So yeah, that's probably why that rating is really low. I would love to get that rating a little bit higher at the end of the year, but I am still trying to get through that priority TBR I have set for myself. So I don't know. We'll see whether or not I do by the end of the year. It doesn't really bother me one way or another as long as I'm still reading books that I do enjoy. If I have some misses in there, that is what it is. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. So we're going to get into the questions now without any more rambling because that's the best part of this video, obviously. So we're going to start with our best read for the first half of the year. So the first up we have the best read standalone, and that is going to be The Poet Empress by Shen Tao. Ironically, I also got this recommendation from Jamie. I did get the Illumicrate edition, I think sometime around the time that Jamie started talking about it. I can't quite remember. And after she raved about it multiple times, I was like, you know what? We have to pick this up, especially because I have this absolutely gorgeous edition. And I'm so glad that I do because this was a 5-star read. This is in the running for my favorite book of the year. We'll see. 6 months still to go. But yeah, this is definitely a very strong contender. This just has an absolutely stunning, beautiful world filled with just gorgeous imagery and a lot of Asian-inspired themes. Obviously, it's an Asian-inspired fantasy, so you get a lot of that rich culture and tradition that I'm not familiar with. I haven't read a ton of Asian-inspired fantasy, so getting to see that was beautiful, and I loved the world that she created in here, but also the magic system in here is really unique and beautiful in its own way, and it's poetry magic, and a lot of the magic that they can write with different poems has to be written with love, even if they're kind of like harsh poems, hateful poems, and that in and of itself is a really beautiful concept. The really complex dynamics going on in here surrounding the tension between the main female character and this very tyrannical prince that she is now kind of married herself to and become a concubine to is just very heartbreaking and also a little bit of a struggle for the readers because we're learning so many different things alongside her that we just don't really know how we want to feel about the people in here. And it's just, I don't know, there's a lot to be said in here about family tradition and family dynamics and the situations that family can put themselves in when you pit each other against them, and what type of human that ends up creating. I can't speak too heavily to some of that because I don't want to give anything away, but it's a beautiful, beautiful narrative and absolutely worth the 5 stars that this got. Then moving into my favorite sequel of the year, I have a couple because I'm incapable of picking just one book sometimes. The first up is Rights of Starling. This is the second book to Shield of Sparrows. This was stunning. 5-star read. I really enjoyed Shield of Sparrows, but it wasn't quite a 5-star. This really developed the world and the plot a lot, and the way that it did was in a really unique way. It introduced some new characters, and their storyline and the way it affected the storyline from the first book was so well done, and I think really wove together very seamlessly and beautifully. And once you start realizing the way that it weaves together, I personally was like very impressed with the way that she chose to write this story and the way that she managed to create these 2 timelines and have them weave together. Without giving anything away again, because like I can't, because that's part of like the major thing in this book that I absolutely adored. But yeah, this was an absolutely incredible follow-up to the first book, and I can't wait to see what she does with the third one. Then I do have 2 more. These are kind of cheating because they're not like the second book. Well, one is. We'll just get into it. First up, I have Us Against You, technically the winners. I would also include in this, these are the follow-ups to Beartown, and I just adored this series and the way that these second and third books kind of expanded the world from the first one, expanded the conflict going on with this small town and the other small town, and you got to see some of the characters develop even more and their storyline, and it just, from book 1 to book 3, you end up following a narrative and how it affects some people in a way that you never thought the story was going to affect people starting in the first one. Like, it ended up being a story that you weren't expected to find out about. So I really, really loved that. And then the one that probably is more stretching it is Iron Gold. This is like the 4th book. 5th book? This one's the 4th book, but then Dark Age I would also include in here, which is the 5th book for the Red Rising saga. Each book just feels like it's getting progressively better and more intense, and because I'm reading the second arc in this world, you're starting to see the way that this rebellion from the first arc is affecting the people that are in it, affecting their loved ones, and, you know, kind of the difficult side of a rebellion that maybe isn't always talked about when you have these fantasy books where it's like, I'm gonna overthrow the regime. Okay, sure, but like, then what? What happens then? So Pierce Brown is doing that so seamlessly, and I think he's really diving into the complexity of how people are affected by this and the choices that they start making, their motivations, if they change, how do they change, why do they change, and then there are so many characters going on in here, and the world is just so expansive. It's incredible. I would never be able to keep it straight if I was the one writing it. It's just so well done, and I can't wait to get to the last book in that little saga until he releases Red God. Then we're going to talk about my disappointments for the first half of the year, just for a little. I'm not going to harp on these too much. So my biggest disappointment, like standalone, is definitely going to be Sleep Like Death. This was a 1-star read. I really don't know why I didn't DNF it. I think I was just being stubborn. I ranted about it a couple times, but like, it really just was so derivative of multiple different fairy tales. It literally stole the idea of the Moving Castle and Howl's Moving Castle and put it in there. There was just no original thought happening in this book, and then the writing was so painfully YA that it was like middle grade, but not even like a well done middle grade, because like I love Percy Jackson, I think that's a fantastic middle grade series. This was just, it just wasn't good writing, and it was supposed to be YA, so it shouldn't even fit the category of middle grade, and it just, there was nothing really redeeming about that book, which was very, very sad. I expected to love it. I had like the special edition from Fairy Loot, I think. And I kind of, in my brain, thought if we're doing that as a part of the subscription box, it means like this is a really good book. That was just not the case. Then going into my like least favorite sequel, we have Vicious Fae. This is the third book in the Ruthless Boys of the Zodiac Academy series. Technically, book 3 through 5 were huge disappointments to me. I really enjoyed the first two books. I thought the plot that we were getting and the sort of mystery element going on in this fantasy world was really fun, and I did enjoy the characters at first, but once we started getting into these subsequent books in the series, it just felt like we were focusing way too much on the spice and the romance going on. It's a white shoes romance, so like so many different spicy scenes because she's with so many different people, and I feel like the plot and the mystery of it all fell to the wayside. Her motivation to try to solve all of this just went down the drain, and it was kind of depressing. I really thought that we were going to get more of it. I pushed through these because I wanted all of those little breadcrumbs that connect back to the Zodiac Academy world for when I jump back into that, but like, if that weren't the case, I probably wouldn't have pushed myself through these, and now that I've read them, I feel like probably not that many things happen in here that I really needed for the Zodiac Academy series, so I probably could have just stopped reading it, but it's what it is at this point. Now we're done. Getting into some of the releases that have come out this year, as far as like the ones that came out in the first 6 months of the year that I haven't read but I would really love to. A lot of these are actually, not a lot, 2 of them. I only have 3 on this list. There's quite a few that I do want to read, but 2 of them are follow-ups to books that I've recently read. So we have Lightwielder, which is the sequel to Metal Slinger. Read that in June, gave it a 4.5-star read, really hoping that we get some more expansion to this world and the magic system, but it was such a fun, fast-paced book. I anticipate Lightwielder being the same. The next book is Furybound, which is the sequel to Direbound. Also read that in June. That was another 4.5-star read. I felt like it was very similar to a lot of romantasy out there. I was able to guess a lot of things, but I still enjoyed the story and the adventure that we went on, the dire wolves, and I'm really hopeful that the author is going to start expanding into some storylines that maybe aren't as reminiscent of other romantasy books and give us a little bit more expansion into the world and maybe the war that they're a part of, because the first book is so set in the training school that they're in. So I'm hoping now that we're out of that, we can kind of get more development, and I'm still hopeful that I'm going to enjoy that. And then another one that I would really love to get to sometime during the summer, before summer ends, is Our Perfect Storm by Carly Fortune. Her books are just like the epitome of a summer read. Always fantastic for that, and I really, really want to read this one. It's just, right now it's only available on hardcover, and I'm stubborn. I have all of the other ones in paperback, and it needs to match, so I'm not going to buy the hardcover. So I've been trying to wait for a Libby hold to come through. I just don't know if it's going to before summer ends. Either way, I would love to get to it this year because I really did like that. Then looking to the second half of the year into anticipated releases that haven't come out yet, we have quite a few in this list. We have In Stormy Weather, which is like a storm chaser romance, kind of like Twisters 2, and I did really love that story. The chasers element, the romance of it, and I would love to read a book about that. I think that'll be really fun. I also enjoyed Chelsea Curto's DC Star series. I've only read one, but I enjoyed her writing in that, so I'm excited to see her writing in this one as well. Then we have Yes Chef, which is by Grace Riley. I read her sports romance series and really enjoyed her writing style, so I'm excited to see her go into a slightly different style of romance, not following sports anymore. This is following a chef and an influencer who has made a lot of mistakes and is trying to kind of rebrand herself a little bit, and I think that releases at the end of July. So I'm excited for that one as well. I did actually get an arc of that I'm going to start reading very, very soon. Then we have The Name and the Moon. This is the follow-up to The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. I'm definitely going to be eating this up as soon as I get it because Rachel Gillig is just like the epitome of a gothic fantasy author. Like, she does them so well. I love that she's doing duology. So many people refuse to just stick to a simple duology, but she manages to make the most of those 2 books and create a really vibrant, gothy, spooky world and a wonderful story. So I'm so excited to be back in that one with Bartholomew and see what's going on with all of those characters. Then we have one by R.F. Kuang. I don't know the premise of it. I also am not sure I'm going to pronounce it right, but I'm going to try. I think it's Tape Story? Not sure on that one. Sorry if I butchered it. Like I said, don't know anything about the premise of this, but I read Catabasis and the first book in the Poppy War series last year and really love R.F. Kuang's writing, and at this point I just really want to get into any book that she has released or is going to release, so that's why this is on my radar. And then the last one we have is Anatomy of Magic by Alexis Menard. She wrote the House of Bane and Blood duet, and I loved that one so much, and I just am really excited that she's putting another book out. I don't actually really know much about this premise either, which I'm okay with, because like I just love her writing and I love the world that she created in the other two, and I know that this is probably going to be another fantastic, maybe steampunk style fantasy. Really excited for that one. Then we have a category that kind of fits like least favorite read, but kind of not. It's biggest disappointment, and I guess this is looking at books that maybe I had high hopes for and it just let me down for one reason or another. And I have two on here. The first one I don't own anymore, and that's The Second Death of Locke. I just really thought I would enjoy this because everybody was raving about the female knight trope going on in here, the romance, saying that it was like really high tension, there was a lot of angst and yearning, and like I just didn't get that vibe from the romance. I didn't understand their romance, their connection at all, but like yeah, the yearning just wasn't there. And I felt like the world building, the magic system, all of it was very underdeveloped, and I don't know, I was so underwhelmed by this story. It wasn't like a 1-star read. I didn't hate it, I just didn't love it as much as people claimed that I would, so that was really disappointing for me. And then my second disappointment is going to actually be Wild Reverence, which I hate saying because I loved the Divine Rivals duology and I loved Rebecca Ross's writing in that. It's so just whimsical and just beautiful lyrical writing, and I expected that in this one. I kind of wonder if I hadn't read the duology and knew that this was connected to it, if I would enjoy this a little bit more, but I just don't know. I felt like we weren't kind of rooted in the story enough in the beginning because you're following her as she ages, but it's not, it just doesn't feel like it's well done following her as she ages. And for Rebecca Ross's writing, you really need to be like grounded in a story and a scene and allowed to really run with it because of her writing style, I feel. Anyway, obviously I'm not her, but like that's how it felt. Like we just didn't have enough time in a scene for her to really go into it, and so it took a long time to get that writing style back. And I also just didn't really, once we got to the main meat of the story, I kind of didn't get it. Like getting as airheaded as that sounds, I just didn't get why this was the story that we chose to tell with these characters, and the romance in it felt very flat to me. I don't know, I just didn't love this as much as I had wanted to, so that was a huge disappointment because I love the Divine Rivals duology so much, so yeah. That being said, we're going to flip the coin and we're going to talk about my most surprising read of the year, and for this one, I chose one that it wasn't necessarily surprising because I didn't think I would love it, and I did. It's surprising because the concept in the book is so unique and I've never seen it done before, and that's going to be A Stage Set for Villains. This follows this world that doesn't really have any art in it. There's no singing, there's no music, there's no dancing, storytelling, any of it, except for in the Playhouse, which consists of a bunch of players with immortality and godlike powers, and it's kind of debated if they are gods, if they're just descendants of gods, like what the deal is with these players. And every, I forget how many years, they open this casting call where people can come to the Playhouse and audition to become a player, and if they get far enough in the audition, they actually end up competing against one of the players to take their spot in the Playhouse and take their immortality. The thing is, like, they have to kill this player. And they go into this knowing that ultimately one day if they become the head player themselves, they might end up dying for their power because other people are going to take their spots. And it's just a crazy concept that like we're opening up casting calls for people to come in and kill our lead player. And you're like, I don't understand why we're doing that. The main female character in here, she goes to the Playhouse because she has this illness kind of connected to them, and she thinks that they will be able to help save her, and she ends up in the middle of this casting call. The way that this story went from one thing to another was absolutely wild. Like, wild concept going on in here. I can't even begin to describe what it was without spoiling it. So it's really hard to like hint at it to get people interested in it. Yeah, I don't know. You gotta trust me. You gotta trust me that the twist in here is wild and mind-bendy, and I wish the way my mind worked this way to come up with stories like this. Like, it's so crazy, and it's just a really cool reflection on how we interact with art and plays and people in these positions, and also kind of the ego behind wanting these positions of power, knowing that we would kill someone to get them, but we want that immortality and we want all of the things that come with it. So yeah, lots of different things going on in this one, but it was a fantastic read. This was another 5-star. I feel like now is a good time to talk about some of my new favorite authors. These are either going to be new authors to me or they're just debut authors that I found this year and really, really loved. So the first one, I'm just gonna look at my phone because I have a list here. The first is Shen Tao. She wrote The Poet Empress. That was a debut novel, knocked it out of the park. I will absolutely read whatever she puts out next because it's absolutely incredible. Then we have Shalini, I still don't know how to pronounce this last name, Abhisekara. Probably pronounced that wrong and I'm so sorry. I will put the picture of the book on the screen, but she wrote This Monster of Mine, which was another 5-star read. I read it right after The Poet Empress, and this is a fantasy that is inspired by ancient Rome and their political and also their justice system. Lots of female rage going on in this one, lots of female empowerment. She is determined to kind of right the wrongs that were done to her, figure out who almost killed her one night, and the tension between the two main characters is off the charts. Their romance was incredible. Loved it so much. Then we have Kristen Hanna. Obviously, everybody has read, it seems like everybody's read a Kristen Hanna book already. I was very behind the curve on this one, but I finally read one of her books this year. We'll talk about it later, and absolutely loved it, and just solidified her as a new author that I'm going to have to read. All of her backlist and any new books that she puts out. I just don't make the rules. Her writing was too incredible not to read the rest of her books. Then we have Melissa K. Roach. She wrote the Lady of Darkness series and a couple other series that kind of interconnect with that. I've only read 2 of her books, but adore her writing, adore the mental health representation going on in the fantasy worlds that she creates. So at this point, I'm going to be reading all of her backlist and then obviously any of her new releases. And then lastly, this list could be so much longer, but like I tried to whittle it down a little bit. We have Stacia Stark. She wrote We Who Will Die. This is another kind of Rome-inspired fantasy with vampires and kind of a love triangle that's very reminiscent of the Vampire Diaries, which I'm absolutely here for because I loved that show. I just really enjoyed her world building, and the writing style was very fast paced, very immersive, and the characters that she created, the romance going on, I just really think I would enjoy her other books, so I definitely want to get into some of her backlist as well. We're going to get into kind of character related questions. So the first one is my newest fictional crush, and that has to be Max Antarius from Daughter of New Worlds. I just loved all of the depth going on with this character. He is such a complex person who is a really like strong magic wielder and very powerful in his own right, very knowledgeable, but he has a lot of stuff going on in his backstory for why he doesn't want to be a part of magic anymore, doesn't want to teach people how to use this anymore, but he kind of gets dragged back into it. And when he starts this romance with Tisana, he really doesn't want a romance with her. He's like, no, I like my little recluse life, please leave me alone. But he can't help but fall in love with her, and he can't help but be a simp for her and pretty much just crawl on his knees whenever she asks. Like, he will go to the ends of the earth for her. She just has to ask. And I love that. Like, there is just something about him that I'm like, yeah, he's down bad, and I like that in a guy. I like that in a guy. He stands on his own, he does, but like, he adores her so much that he's just like, yes, I will do whatever you want me to do. So yeah, Max is definitely my newest fictional crush. That leads into my favorite fictional characters from the year, and also in this book we have Tisana, who I mentioned. That's the female character. She is such a badass and the embodiment of female empowerment, female rage. She used to be a slave, managed to get herself out of this position, and she is determined to learn how to hone her magic, learn how to become a stronger, better fighter, to go back to where she was from, to free other people that are in enslavement. And it's just inspiring and incredible. I love female characters like that, where they're like, you know what, I'm going to take my powers, I'm going to do something good with them, even if it's to the detriment of myself, like, because she knows that there's a chance that this is going to hurt her. But she's willing to do that because she's willing to sacrifice for the people that she cares about, even if she doesn't really know them. She just wants what's best for people, and I love that so much. Then another new favorite character we have is Tress. She's kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum a little bit. She's a much softer, more feminine character. She likes collecting teacups, and she likes her cute little simple life on an island with her family and her love, and that's about it. I forget what his name is. What is her love's name? Charlie. Her love's name's Charlie. But she has her badass moments. And when she reached it, it was a doozy. And that's because Charlie gets kidnapped by this sorceress. Nobody's willing to go help him. They say it's a lost cause. They're not going to pay a ransom. Nothing. She's like, you know what? That's just completely unacceptable. So she figures out a way to smuggle herself onto a pirate ship. Has she ever left this island? No. Has she ever been on a pirate ship? No. Never even interacted with these people except for hearing about them outside of stories. But she is like, I'm doing this. I'm determined. So she gets on this ship and she starts figuring out a way to con this crew into going to the sorceress to fight them when she has no powers, no experience, nothing. So like, very soft character that just makes me smile, and she's very kind of naive and cute and whimsical, but she has this badass quality to her when she needs to, and I just loved that. I loved that so much. While I still have this one, we're going to talk about books that made me smile in the first half of the year, and this was one of them. Like, I was just smiling talking about her. I love her character. I love some of the other characters in here. It's a very whimsical, beautiful world. I listened to the audiobook for it, and listening to the way that it's narrated from the perspective of a person involved in the story, he's like it's kind of like a third person omniscient. It's very similar to kind of the storytelling in The Princess Bride, and I really liked that. It's like you're sitting there listening to someone tell you this story, like tell you a fairy tale, tell you a bedtime story, and I really enjoyed it. Also, Brandon Sanderson just creates really beautiful fantasy worlds, and this one's a much more, again, whimsical type of fantasy world. It's not quite as high stakes as some of his other ones. The magic system in here is just really unique and vibrant and beautiful. So I really enjoyed this one. And then we have The Strawberry Patch Pancake House. Yes, I know that some people don't really like this series. It's just a kind of fluffy romance series, not a lot of depth going on to it. It's just a good, cute time. And that's about it. This one specifically I really enjoyed because it follows a man who did not realize that he was a father. Unfortunately, the mother to his child passed away, and somebody reached out and was like, hey, you're the dad, and we kind of need you to come to Dream Harbor and take care of her and take custody of her because you're the father. He has no idea how to sort of connect with children. They're not really involved in his life. He's kind of a gruff, harder man. He's a chef that was working in Michelin star restaurants. Very disciplined, very strict, very just, I don't know, not a soft, gently type. But he needs to figure out a way to connect with his daughter, and you get to see those moments in this book, and they're really heartfelt and moving, and they just made me smile when you get to see those little breakthroughs where they start connecting with each other and being comfortable with each other, and he's learning how to be a father. It was heartwarming, and I like that in a romance book. On the flip side to that, we have books that made me cry. There were quite a few at the beginning of the year. The first is going to be The Nightingale. I told you I was going to talk about this. This one is just devastating. Like, you feel so connected to the characters in here by the end of the book. It's set in World War II during Nazi Germany and follows the story of these two sisters that are in their own ways kind of subverting the norm, trying to go against this absolutely horrific regime, and you get invested in who they are as people, their families, their motivations, and by the end of the book you just really feel so strongly for them, and there's a lot of depressing things going on in here just because of the topic at hand, and I think the gravity of it just hits so much harder because you know that these are like based on true stories and true accounts that people had to live through, and an absolutely horrible time in history that people had to live through, and you just can't help but get a little bit teary while reading that stuff, okay? It's just sad. Then we have one I already talked about previously, but I have to talk about it again because this series wrecked me so much. Us Against You and The Winners both made me sob, ugly cry. It was just this one specifically had a scene in here that just so strongly depicts kind of like the complexity of humans, where these two towns, they hate each other, but something horrific happens and this hatred towards each other gets put aside, and there's a moment of solidarity and support where it's like, we don't like you. We still don't. We're not going to moving forward. But in this moment, we need to acknowledge the grief and the pain that your side is going through, and we're going to stand with you for just a little. For just a little. And you get to see that play out on the page, and it's really moving, and it's really sad. So yeah, I was ugly crying to this one as well. The Winners also made me cry, but this one I think made me cry just a little bit harder than The Winners did. And then lastly, we had The Poet Empress. Like I said, beautiful, complex story going on in here. The family dynamics really eat away at you, and not knowing kind of how you feel about the main male character eats away at you. And by the time you get to the end of this book, it's like the second to last page that made me cry. There is just this portrayal of the way that things could have been, the way that things were for some of the characters in this story, and the way that they could have been if family and tradition and obligation hadn't kind of created this rift and torn them apart and twisted some of these characters into the people that they become. But you get to see what they should have been, and you get to see them experience that one more time. And it, without giving anything away, I'm going to stop now, but like it really brought me to tears when I got to see that. And it's like, these poor characters, like, they should have had better. They deserved better, but they didn't get it. And it's just really, it was just really sad. We have two more questions. The first is most beautiful book that I either bought or received at the beginning of the year. So I have three because it's really hard to narrow this down. The first is going to be this stunning BookCon edition of Blood and Ether. It has all of like this gilded raised font on here that I think is absolutely gorgeous. And then just the design on the front is really beautiful. I really need to read this one. Haven't gotten there yet. Then, even though it was a disappointment, I do have Wild Reverence. I've always loved this design style that they had going on for the duology, and then of course they decided that the prequel also should follow that. This is the Fairy Loot edition. I love just the colorways and the subdued nature of them, but then also some of the really pretty foiling going on. And then this is my favorite. I love the artwork in these books. I think it's just beautiful. Again, some more foiling in there as well. And then the last one that I have is another Fairy Loot book that I haven't read yet. This is much more feminine and kind of subdued, and I really, really like it. I think it's really pretty. But my favorite part about it is going to be the naked hardback. I love these colors. I think they are so pretty. Again, very, very feminine and just beautiful. Another one that I really, really need to get to. And then my last question for this tag is going to be books that I need to get to by the end of the year. So like pretty much just my priority TBR for the second half of the year. And that's going to be the remainder of my 2026 priority TBR. There's 26 books on there. I've gotten through 10. I've gotten through 10. So I have 16 more, so we're going to rapid fire through those really quick. We have When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. The second arc of Red Rising, I do only have one book left in that one, so I'm making progress on that, thankfully. The City of Gods and Monsters series, which I'm very intimidated by because these are massive books. Bonds of Hercules, the Poison Study series, Merciful as the Dark, which is the sequel to Cruel as the Light, which I read last year, really, really loved it. It's like a demon angel war story, kind of reminiscent of The Mortal Instruments, actually. Then we have The Bletchley Riddle, which I think is a historical fiction. It's co-authored by one of my favorite historical fiction authors, so that's why it's on the list. I'm really excited about it. That we have the remainder of the Poppy War series. I have 2 books left in this one. The entirety of the Crescent City series, A Dance of Lies, Blood Over Brighthaven, Mistress of Lies, Immortal, Not the Girl You Marry, Wretched, Fight, and Queen of the Damned, which is on an omnibus, so it's like just thick and chunky. So we'll see how that one goes. But yeah, lots of books on my priority TBR for the end of the year. We'll see if I get to them or not. I always end up making other TBRs that just don't seem to include those for some reason, and then I forget about it. I don't know why. I make too many TBRs. I make too many TBRs, and very rarely do they kind of mix together and work together. But you know what? It's fun to make them. I'm not gonna change my ways at this point. But anyway, if you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching until the end. I would love to know what maybe your favorite book for the beginning of the month was, and then your least favorite. Let me know kind of what that dichotomy looked like. I'm very, very curious. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in another video very soon.